When I talk about the importance of norms, it's because we need that context. Data alone does not necessarily become interpretable. And I think this is always evident to me when I watch the Olympics. And every time there's an Olympics, some version of a tweet goes viral that's like, please, for the love of God, just put one regular person in the event so I know how good these people are.
Yeah, the long jump, right? I'm like, that wasn't very long.
Right?
But then like put me there.
Exactly. It is especially relevant in something like speed walking. I don't know about you.
Wait, is that an Olympic sport?
It is.
No, it's not.
It is.
Okay, Karyn, imagine an alien has come to Earth and they're like, what do you do? And pretend that I have a buzzer and I'm going to buzz it anytime you use words that alien would not understand. And by alien, I mean me. I'm not going to understand. So tell me what it is you do here.
I lead a research team at NWEA, and that probably sounds really dry and not exciting at all, but I want to emphasize that there are some really exciting parts about it. And what I love about my job is I get to lead a team of scholars who care really deeply about making education better for kids. And to do that, we don't want to just make random guesses about what would improve education. We want to look to the data and study what are the policies, what are the practice shifts that make a difference in classrooms. And so we connect information about what's happening in schools and states and classrooms to our map growth data in particular to ask questions that illuminate how can we improve the system.
I'm going to just put this in super layperson terms. You're looking at data. And you're looking at data that's internal map assessment data because you work for NWEA HMH, right?
That's
and
true.
You're looking at our internal data, and then you're kind of like comparing it, triangulating it, cross-referencing it with other public data that's out there. Are you partnering with anybody? Are you working with specific data sets? Or is it just kind of like, guys, hit the ground running and let's like look at the research? Like what research are you digging into, triangulating?
It's a range of things. And I think I would answer that by talking about how we decide what to study, because it isn't just what's interesting on a Tuesday.
Right.
I talk to my team all the time about how deep the well is of map growth data. We have data points from decades, and we have data points from millions of students. There's an endless number of questions we could ask.
Yeah.
But just because we could doesn't mean that we should. And whenever we decide what to work on, I always bring back 3 points to my team. Is it timely? Is this addressing an issue or a challenge or a pain point for our partners right now on the ground?
Right.
Is it relevant? Would we be using information that our partners care about? Is it a problem that is relevant to them
Not
tomorrow?
Not just your curiosity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, is it actionable? Can we produce evidence that changes the way that they act in the classroom or a policy that they put in place in the school that would make things better for kids? And those filters, is it timely? Is it relevant? Is it actionable? That is how we guide our work. And that's what gets us really excited about being able to produce research that could actually change the practice and the policy in the schools that we work with.
So I'm a teacher by trade, and I always want to know, how can I use data to better understand my kids?
I'd say my first answer to that question is that it's really important when we look at data to consider it from a systems lens as opposed to a student deficit frame. And what I mean by that is that it's often just a little bit hard to look past that test score. We see it, we think, oh, this is disappointing. Why wasn't this kid coming to school more often? Why weren't they engaging in math class? Why weren't they trying harder in the test? But that test score isn't just about that kid and their motivation and their skills on that day. It's about the whole ecosystem that kid is embedded within. And some of those factors are within controls of schools, things like teacher quality, instructional materials, the classroom climate. Some of them are not. They're a little bit more distal. Things like the child's nutrition, their early learning experiences, their home life, their socioeconomic status. But I don't want teachers to think that that test score alone is just about that kid and forget that we need to broaden our aperture and make sure we're considering the whole ecosystem of factors that have produced that test score on that day.
What are you seeing most excites you about how data can illuminate the way we can make education better? Like, what are you like, oh, I love it when I'm allowed to talk about X?
That's a really good question, because I think often we come at the research lens of what are the problems that we can illuminate? Like, where are the wounds in the system that we aren't paying enough attention to? And we often like lose sight of what are the bright spots, what's going well. Some of the work my team is doing now is trying to flip that script. We spent a lot of time over the last 5 years studying how COVID has harmed kids. But now we want to understand, where are the successes? We're 5 years out. Are we seeing places where schools and districts have recovered? And if we can find out what's happening there, what lessons can we take away from that moving forward?
Yeah, how can we go bottle that lightning?
Yeah. My colleague, Sue Kowalski, is an expert in science instruction. She's been asking interesting questions about the overlap between science instruction and literacy instruction. And it turns out paying attention to both can be really powerful. It doesn't have to be an either-or game. So right now she's digging into map growth data to look for the schools that are showing high growth in both of those subjects so that we can then go visit those schools and ask them, what are you doing to achieve success in both science and literacy, to try and learn some lessons that we can pass on to our other partners.
Do you have any suspicions?
Stay tuned.
Oh, yeah, I'm tuned. You mentioned in your keynote a school that you really loved. I think it was called Guilford. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. I love the work that Guilford has done, and it has impressed me so much because they have never defined their sphere of influence as only within the four walls of the school. So like all schools across the nation, after COVID, their kids came back and they were like, wow, achievement is a lot lower. We have a problem on our hands. And they didn't just stop there by only using academic solutions to solve what looked like an academic problem. They did, of course. They used high dosage tutoring. They expanded their summer school programming. They double dosed math. But they saw the other barriers in that broader ecosystem that were preventing their kids from thriving. So that looked like attending to transportation challenges, making sure that they expanded their bus route and gave bonuses to the bus drivers to make sure that they could get kids to school. They worked with the county and city to get public transit passes to get kids to school. They saw that their kids were facing challenges in receiving healthcare and mental health wellness supports. So they implemented telehealth centers in schools and got kids connected to licensed therapists. They saw food scarcity as a problem in their communities. And so they provided more meals in school, not just school lunches, but other meals as a way to meet kids' nutritional needs, but also to get them reconnected with schools.
Yeah.
So what I think is so
communal.
Powerful is that they looked to the community, they looked more broadly for solutions. They saw, these are our kids problems, these are our problems. And even if they're not just within our school system, we're going to do something about it.
How, as a teacher, do you take steps towards building your own data literacy, or even as a school leader, modeling data literacy?
I think that's a great question. I think about this a lot. And I often wonder if there's this sense of teachers of kind of the math anxiety can creep in.
Yes.
I don't have a background in statistics. I'm not an assessment expert.
I look at this for 2 seconds and I don't know what I'm looking at. So
get overwhelmed. What's the difference in a percentile and a percentage? I don't remember.
I don't.
And shut the reports down. And I talked about this on the main stage here at Fusion, and something that's really passionate about is I want to make sure teachers appreciate the lens that they bring to data that I, a researcher with a PhD, do not. And for me, I'm several steps removed from the classroom, and it's easy to forget that there's a kid behind that data point. And I think the lens teachers and school leaders bring is so valuable to remember that kiddo, the context of the relationships in the classroom, that kid's individual strengths and challenges, and the nuance that brings to making sense of that data point in conjunction with others. And now that leads to more, I think, holistic solutions for that kid. So I think I don't have specific tips for that teacher, but I would say, you know more than you think you do, and you bring a lot to the table. And that is not lesser than my PhD in psychology.
What are some action items you could give to them as they are approaching making their data meaningful?
We often fall into the trap of looking at our data in more of a surface way and failing to dig as deep as we possibly could. And one thing I often see is a reluctance to face some of the more painful gaps in our data. Like, we have a suspicion there might be an achievement gap there, but we'd rather just focus on the averages. And particularly, I think, in high achieving districts, this can be a phenomenon that most kids are doing well.
So
our story is one of success. Let's stop there. But I think that not paying attention to what's happening for all kids is problematic. And we need to know, sure, the average kid is successful, but what's happening on all ends of the spectrum? And are there kids that we aren't supporting as well as we could? And how can we be better targeting resources to those kiddos?
So kind of paying attention to the margins, the edges.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen data applied irresponsibly? And what does that look like? And how would you get them back on track?
I'm not sure I would use the irresponsible for the example I want to use, but I often shy away and feel uncomfortable when we use data for blaming as opposed to moving us forward and solutioning. So during the pandemic, I had to take your seat basically, and do a lot of media interviews to talk about our research, looking at the impact.
I mean, you were live.
I was live. I mean, if I never again hear the words, Dr. Lewis, you're live in 3, 2, 1, I will die happy. But anyway, during these conversations, my goal, and one that I think really motivates my team, is how can we use data to illuminate? How can we shine light on problems? These conversations, I would try and keep on that vein. Let's understand how kids were harmed, by how much, and importantly, who was harmed the most so that we can support them.
Yeah, I didn't hear who did the harming.
Exactly. And the conversation would often turn to looking for sources of blame, like, let's go back to 2020 and relitigate those decisions about whether to close schools, how long to stay remote. And at first I tried to demurely, no comment. That's not my area of expertise. But eventually I got really fed up with this line of questioning because it is not helpful. What do we learn? How do we support kids differently by looking backwards to blame who's at fault for those decisions? And I think that there's parallels here to how data can be used in school systems. I'm thinking of an example of a district-wide meeting about a Read by Grade 3 program. And a slide gets put up that is proficiency rates across elementary schools in the district. And if the question just becomes who's lowest on the list, all eyes turn to that principal. It becomes questions about what's wrong with your teachers, what's wrong with your school, why aren't you getting results, as opposed to what are the kids like that you're serving? What kind of supports do your teachers need? How can we help you improve? Those are two very different conversations. And I think when you use data to blame, it shuts down. It stops the problem solving and just brings kind of a shame component into it.
Yeah.
And doesn't help kids ultimately.
No, I'm hearing there's a difference between causes and blaming.
Yes.
It's fair to look at what's causing this, but that has to be very different and frame. I loved the way that you framed that. It's more of a not how did we get here, and more of a what do you need now?
Yep, exactly.
Karyn, if you were not a researcher at NWEA, what would you be doing?
This is ridiculous, but my passion is making really slick PowerPoints. And you can see it when I present. I put a lot of time and effort.
You did have a very slick PowerPoint.
Yosh helped. Credit where it's due. But
you just kind of want it. So if I came to you and I had a PowerPoint and I was like, please make this look good.
The girl, give me 2 days. I'll turn around. I love it. I love finding the through line in the story and making it really clear and really accessible to anybody. And I think that's why I've been successful in my career at NWEA, is because the thing I'm most passionate about is making sure everyone understands the message in front of them. And especially when it comes to technical information. I think there's a lot of aspects of MAP growth that can be overwhelming for teachers. What exactly is a RIT score? What do you mean an achievement percentile? What's the difference in percentages and percentiles? I want to make sure that we make that information as accessible to our partners as possible so that they can use it well, they interpret it well, and they act on it well.
You're a sense maker.
I'm a sense maker. I like that.
Okay, can you give us a working definition of how a teacher would encounter the term norms? Help us know what we're talking about when we talk norm, the word norm, please. And then can you talk to us about how teachers might use, apply, decipher, sense make norms in their classroom?
Sure. So RIT scores are great. RIT scores on their own are nearly meaningless. And this is true of all data points.
Right.
Without some kind of context, it's just a number. We need context to help us make sense of that number and turn it into information. We can draw context from multiple sources. One of them is a benchmark. Is this kid meeting a specific standard? Another piece of context is norms, and that situates a student score within their peers. And that's what MAP growth norms do. They say not just your kid scored a 191 on their fall MAP growth test. 191, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. We take that and we place it in the context of students like them. So students in the same grade, the same subject, and importantly, that have had the same amount of instruction. Not just the blunt label of fall, but 4 weeks into the school year. Because 4 weeks of instruction is very different than 8 weeks of instruction. We want to be very specific in who we compare them to. So it takes your kiddo's score and compares them to their peers. So it's not just, are they average? Are they above average? Are they below? Your score is at the 67th percentile. We know with specificity how far or above, below or above your kid is relative to the national population of students. Importantly, norms help us understand what is realistic. They can't alone let us know what is meaningful. And that's why we bring two lenses to RIT scores when we want to interpret them. We use our norms to understand what's realistic. We use our linking studies to understand what is meaningful and whether your kid is on track to meet important outcomes, important benchmarks. Those two lenses together are necessary to form that complete picture of student learning.
So really the ecosystem of what those next steps might be after it sounds like you're kind of like giving a little bit of a speed bump of like, before we talk about next steps, let's just make sure we all understand what the data is saying about where they are now.
Exactly, because you need to have an accurate, realistic perception of where they are now. You need to know where you want them to go, and you need to know how to get them there. Average growth is not always going to be enough for every kid to get them to that place where you need them to be. For some kids, it's going to take above average growth. But we want to set goals that they might be more ambitious than just average, but we also don't want them to be unattainable. So you wouldn't want to set a growth goal that's at the 95th percentile, because that means only 5% of kids grow that much within a school year. That's going to be demotivating to the students to set a goal so high. And it's not going to be instructionally relevant for the teacher to try and achieve that level of growth probably within a year. So we use norms to help us balance both knowing what's realistic for this kiddo, what's meaningful, and how do we get them there.
And what do you mean by the difference between realistic and meaningful?
That's a great question. So realistic growth or realistic achievement is simply how your kid compares to the national population of students in the U.S. Norms describe the population. They do not prescribe where they should be. So when I tell you the average growth for third graders in the fall in math is a RIT score of 185, that's not the grade level standard that third graders should be at in the fall. It's just where they are.
Mm-hmm.
This meaningful piece comes in when we use other pieces of information. Each state sets their own standards for where they want their third graders to be by the end of the year. So what is meaningful depends on context. That's why we have separate linking studies for separate states, because our linking studies combine an analysis of map growth data with state summative data. And we figure out, okay, what kind of growth would be necessary for this kid to get to proficiency? Are they on track? Are they not on track? And that's really instructionally relevant information for teachers. The important thing to keep in mind about those projections about whether a kid is on track for proficiency or not is if we tell you your kid is not on track, we desperately want to be wrong because we want you to take that information and then act on it in a way that changes that kid's trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Data is meant to be changed.
Exactly. When I talk about the importance of norms, it's because we need that context. Data alone does not necessarily become interpretable. And I think this is always evident to me when I watch the Olympics. And every time there's an Olympics, some version of a tweet goes viral that's like, please, for the love of God, just put one regular person in the event so I know how good these people are.
Yeah, the long jump,
right?
I'm like, that wasn't very long.
Right?
But then like put me there.
Right? Exactly. It is especially relevant in something like speed walking. I don't know about you.
Wait, is that an Olympic sport?
It is.
No, it's not.
It is. I am an excessively fast walker on sidewalks.
Prove it.
Like in the airport, I think those moving walkways are for amateurs. Never. Not going to use it. So when I watch that event, it is really hard for me to take in and understand just how good these athletes are. Right? Okay, so let's say I want to pursue my dreams of becoming an Olympian speed walker.
Yeah.
Well, first, I need to know what's normal, what's average. So I could time myself, right? And I compare myself to amateur speed walkers just to know, am I as above average as I think I am? That helps me know what is realistic pace. But it doesn't make any prescriptions of how fast I should be or should shoot for if I wanted to pursue my dream of becoming an Olympian. For that, I'd want to look to benchmark information. So I could go to the Olympic trials and what is the cutoff pace that I would need to be to even qualify for those trials.
Got it.
So the difference here is that norms help us understand what's realistic. Benchmarks like state summative tests and proficiency cut scores help us set goals to get to what is meaningful.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I also love that you are an aspiring Olympian speed walker.
I was until I looked this up for the presentation today. Would you like to guess the fastest mile time
of a speed walker? Well, I think I have a question first because, data. What constitutes the difference between speed walking and running?
Your feet can't leave the ground.
So I can't take a picture of your feet.
Your feet leave the ground, obviously, but one has to be on the ground at all times.
Okay, got it. Fastest mile of a speed walker?
The race.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to say 9 minutes. She's laughing at me.
5 minutes and 30 seconds.
How long was that person? See, that's relevant data.
How long were their legs?
How long were their legs? Because these little piggies can and do speed walk all over the airport. I'm passing people that are 6 feet. What if I made you research something else? Like I made you right now. What would you research? Like a question you would answer.
What would I research? When I was a PhD student, what I studied, why I went into research in the first place, was I was really interested in why women are more likely than men to leave math and science fields. So I studied what it is about classrooms that is more or less welcoming for students. And what I found was really the heart of my research was that it's not just for women that they feel less of a sense of belonging because there are fewer women in math and science. It's also because they don't feel they have that intellectual fit, because we have this stereotypes about who is good at math, who is good at science. So it's this dual nature of not only do you not belong here because there's not many people like you, but you don't have the right mental skills.
And the reason there's not more people like you is because you don't have the right mental skills.
It's a cyclical cycle. And so I found this study that we did, we looked at, okay, well, what if we normalize it and just made it clear that math and science is hard for everybody? It's not just you, it's everybody. And that was a really powerful message for women in particular. For men, it made no difference. But for women, we did a study of physics undergrad students, and it made them more likely to pursue the next class in the series.
Oh, I love that. I think I got that message. I did. I don't think I had a role model. And as you get older, you start realizing that more and more about like who was your role model. I think role models become more salient as we age. And I think you're right. As becoming a math teacher was one of like the scariest things I said yes to, because I felt like such an imposter. But it was so much fun. It is so much fun. And man, they don't tell you that you don't have to go home and grade 5-paragraph essays.
Surprise.
Dr. Karyn Lewis, thank you so much for sitting down, and having this little fireside chat with me, even though it pales in comparison to your live COVID appearances. But as we wrap up, what keeps you going? What keeps you coming back to the work?
I would say 2 things. We've just spent 3 days with our partners here in Fusion, and it's hard to put into words just how energizing it is to be with folks that are working in schools every day with kids. I draw so much energy from that. And if I were to say what keeps me going, it's getting to come and be with these audiences and hear their deep appreciation for the work we're doing and how the messages that we're sharing resonate and help them change the work that they're doing in the field with kids. The other thing that keeps me going is the amazing team that I have the extreme privilege of leading. These are folks that also have PhDs and very illustrious CVs, but they're in it not to rack up more publications, to win grant funding. They care so deeply about using our data for good. And those 3 points that I shared with you about how our research, we seek projects that are timely and relevant and actionable, that really is the North Star for all of us. I don't have to remind them of that at any point. That, for them, too, is the core of why we do the work that we do to support our partners and make things better for kids around the country.